Number 10. The Thunderbolts. There is a time in the comics where it looked like Earth had lost most of its heroes, and Baron Zemo saw this lull as the perfect time to organize a super team of his own. Although his crew, composed mostly of villains, pretended to be a force for good, they originally had evil intentions. The MCU Zemo, played by Daniel Bruhl, definitely has the intelligence and financial resources to pull together a Thunderbolts crew. Daniel Bruhl's Zemo has already been portrayed in a more sympathetic light in 2021's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and the Thunderbolts movie may see him continue to seek redemption for his past by spearheading a team of would-be heroes, or anti-heroes, or even possibly villains. It's also been shown that Julia Louise-Dreyfus Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is a major character in the movie. We've seen Contessa appear in several Phase 4 post-credit scenes already, recruiting characters like Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova and Wyatt Russell's John Walker to her mysterious cause. Contessa may be forming the Thunderbolts in response to the dissolution of the Avengers, but given the character's often treacherous nature in the comics, it's easy to imagine Contessa doing something villainous. I'm just imagining an eventual team-on-team fight like in Civil War, instead of just having another big bad.
Number 9. Mole Man. Mole Man originally appeared in Fantastic Four issue number 1, but has become a villain to not just the FF over time, but the Avengers as well. In fact, despite not being one of the strongest villains around, the Avengers even at one point had to team up with the FF to defeat Mole Man, who had kidnapped Sue Storm. Mole Man became a villain because he felt that society had rejected him. He aimed to take revenge on the world for this. Mole Man has taken on more than one Avengers team as well, even having beef with not officially sanctioned West Coast Avengers, believing the team had attacked his home of Subterranea located beneath Monster Island. He is also tangled with Tony Stark's Mighty Avengers as well.
Number 8. Mephisto. On that note, the Marvel Cinematic Universe does feel like it's preparing itself to embrace the darker elements of its comic book counterparts, with projects such as Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and Moon Knight out and about, and Blade on the way with the Black Knight semi-introduced, not to mention the Dweller in Darkness and Shang-Chi. The MCU is getting a darker side, and what's darker than some demons? And if we're talking demons, why not start with one a few of us thought was going to be showing up in the Loki show? Mephisto is the perfect villain to anchor that hell on earth conflict that seems to be coming for Doctor Strange and the other characters who also happen to be a part of the Midnight Suns, a team of mystically powered occult fighters. It would be a unique villain for the Avengers, or maybe an MCU Midnight Suns team to face.
Number 7. Red Ghost. The Red Ghost is also a Fantastic Four villain as well. He is a Russian communist who is known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers. As such, Ivan Kragoff built a ceramic ship and went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gained the ability to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost. Because, you know, he's a communist and he can be see-through. And he also became the leader of the Super Apes, because they also got powers. Later on, he would team up with Mole Man and ended up fighting the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from Mole Man's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank randomly with his team of Super Apes.
Number 6. Kang the Conqueror. Jonathan Majors will portray the notable villain of Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania for the first time outside of the Loki series. But there's no way a villain of this threat level will stop there. Kang's advanced tech, large intellect, and ability to time travel means he can make intricate plans to attack enemies before they even know what hit them. One great story for the MCU to draw upon is Kang War. Now, many fans wondered why the Avengers did not simply go back in time and de-life Thanos as a baby in Avengers Endgame, as kind of a joke, but this story follows up on that idea, but with a villain that can combat it. Kang's retaliation by going around attacking baby versions of the Avengers and erasing them from existence is an even darker version of the blip. Sam Wilson, Jane Foster, Peter Parker, and the daughter of Hank Pym and Vision are all members of the current Avengers roster and all play a part in the story. In addition to new faces we know are coming, like the Black Knight. Not only do the heroes match up, but it also provides an epic and compelling story about Kang, properly demonstrating the power that Kang wields while showing his influence on history.
Number 5. Triune Understanding. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have more sinister motives. Tremont specifically used the organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races. He also used his villainous brothers Lord Templar and Hagen in an attack against the Avengers, in which he then blamed the superhero team for all the destruction that the battle had caused. The crazy thing is, although this organization is not one of the well-known Avengers adversaries, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a time.
Number 4. Magneto. It's hard to imagine Marvel introducing the X-Men into the MCU without also introducing Charles Xavier's #1 frenemy, Magneto. Magneto is such a key and imposing villain in the comics. He has been portrayed twice on the screen, with Michael Fassbender and Ian McKellen killing it both times. Furthermore than just the popularity of the character and the necessity for him to appear opposing the mutants, some insider gossip and possible rumors suggest that Magneto will be teaming up with none other than Doctor Doom in the 5th phase of Marvel. And not only does that completely make sense, it's also terribly cool to imagine. There isn't much to say, because if the MCU is getting mutants, this is kind of a no-brainer.
Number 3. Chaos King. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the Epic Fear itself in terms of Marvel chronological print history, and kind of became overshadowed by it. Ultimately, it also felt a lot less planned out. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikoboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his powers to reverse the effects of life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life, while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong, while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in origin though, when it came to their magic type.
Number 2. Apocalypse. When we were talking about Kang, we talked about how he traveled through history. Well, speaking of characters who had roles in history, one of Kang's time-displaced alternates is called Rama-Tut, who was a pharaoh in ancient Egypt, and he had a bit of a backstory that involved another major villain, the ancient proto-mutant Apocalypse. More than his connection to Kang and the mutants, Apocalypse is also empowered with ancient celestial technology, and the Celestials have had more than a few mentions throughout the MCU, with a major role in the Eternals movie. Also, this major villain is arguably as powerful, if not possibly more powerful, than Thanos in different ways. Actually, speaking of Thanos, Apocalypse may be a bit too much like the Big Chin in terms of stature and the fact that he has his Horsemen of the Apocalypse like Thanos has the Black Order, but he has so much more to offer than that. I also think we gotta get a live-action redemption for this villain after the kind of bad Age of Apocalypse X-Men movie from 2016, but that's just my opinion.
Number 1. Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is a villainous entourage who appear as blue-collar sort of construction workers. In reality, they are Dirk Garthwaite, who was originally Wrecker, and his team comprised of Thunderbell, aka Elliot Franklin, previously a physicist, Bulldozer, previously a military sergeant known as Henry Camp, Pile Driver, aka Brian Kaluski, who used to be a farmer. They received their powers when they all came into contact with the crowbar as it was struck by some kind of magical lightning. They have attempted to take hold of the Avengers Mansion on more than one occasion, teaming up with the Masters of Evil during one of their attempts and kidnapping Misty Knight and using her to control Iron Fist another time. They are usually handily defeated by the Avengers when they go up against the team, however. It seems that magical construction equipment and mystical abilities, which are tied to that equipment, is not really enough to defeat the Avengers, I guess.
Starting us off in at number 10, Kang the Conqueror. Kang is by far one of the Avengers' most notorious villains, so much so that fans of the MCU have actually speculated he'll be the next big bad in future phases. Now in the comics though, he's almost destroyed Earth in an attempt to gain the power of Celestial. The time-traveling villain has had many different iterations over the years, as is the case when you're a character who has traveled to vastly different eras. But the reason why he's earned their respect came from his later years in the comics, when his teenage self became Iron Lad and led the Young Avengers. That version of Kang had an almost tragic story though. Well, actually pretty tragic, since he was forced to return to his own era knowing that he would become Kang the Conqueror, something he had to do in order to preserve the timeline and ultimately save his teammates. Oh, my heart is breaking. Up next, number 9, Ultron. In the comics, Ultron was created by Hank Pym as a defense protocol that he concocted that eventually exceeded Hank's own intelligence, and decided it had greater ambitions. Now for the past 5 decades, Ultron is a character that has kept the Avengers on their toes, and in the Age of Ultron story arc, an alternate future timeline, he actually defeated the team, and has taken over the planet, very different than the MCU one. Despite all of the crazy time travel shenanigans Ultron has caused the team to endure over the years, he's also responsible for the creation of Vision, and he's a character whose intelligence is something something that several members on the team can at bare minimum respect. Even look to the MCU to see a similar result. Tony Stark, with the help of Bruce Banner, created Ultron in the movies, a robotic being whose intelligence and snark he can at least say matches his own, if not excels altogether. In at number 8, Hank Pym. Okay, here's out on this one. Traditionally, Hank Pym is a superhero, but he's had moments where he's antagonized the Avengers and purposely put them in danger for his own means. And yes, while those moments happened under extreme duress and were the result of his poor state of mental health, technically speaking, you could still argue that his actions were villainous. When he was court-martialed from the Avengers, he concocted a plan to have one of his robotic creations attempt to kill the team, with him saving the day and therefore getting back in their good graces. Janet, of course, protested, and then he beat her. As you can imagine, his plans clearly backfired, and he was outed from the team altogether, but eventually joined up as an advisor with the West Coast Avengers, where he almost committed suicide. That being said, he's also a character that the Avengers saw needed help, eventually, and has managed to get back into their good graces. These days, Hank is a combination of himself and our previous number Ultron, an actual hybrid between the two, although it was revealed that the hybrid is kind of one-sided. It's more so Ultron wearing Hank as a skin suit. Yeah, the whole thing has us feeling a little unsettled too. In at 7, Cyclops. Again, yes, we have a number that is technically a superhero, but has had a history of straying from the path of good into one where he let a bunch of teenagers become murderers. Just cuz. When Cyclops first hit the scene in the X-Men issue 1 in 1963, Scott Summers was the leader of said team, working under Charles Xavier to guide the team of mutants to successful victories on the battlefield and in missions. But over time, Scott changed. During the Schism story event, we saw a more villainous side of Cyclops emerge, and later during Avengers vs. X-Men, after Cyclops had started up his own team of X-Men on Utopia, and the Phoenix Force was all like, hey, I'm back on Earth, and using Hope Summers as a host, Cyclops found himself up against the Avengers. Now, Captain America and the Avengers wanted to take Hope into custody to protect the Earth, fearing what the Phoenix Force may try to do. It does have a pretty bad track record. Cyclops, though, believed that Hope and the Phoenix Force could be used to jumpstart the mutant population. Major conflict ensues, and Scott only got darker from there. Needless to say, despite being arrested and ending up in prison and still having pretty messed up ideologies, he's cooperative with the Avengers, and even lets Iron Man study him for remaining effects of the Phoenix Force. Now, these days he's trying to get back on track as a good guy. But at least before he lost his crap, he was a respectable leader for mutants to look up to, and for a long time, that was something the Avengers respected as well. In at 6, Nebula. Nebula is a character in both the comics and the cinematic adaptations that has managed to earn the respect of Avengers members. More so in the MCU, if we're being honest. Let's look at the comics though. Thanos, who is her grandfather in the comics, was pissed off that Nebula claimed kinship to him, and proceeded to almost kill her after he got all the Infinity Gems, transforming her into a corpse-like figure, always almost on the verge of death but never actually dying, but not truly alive either. He was like really proud of that. Actually, Thanos, no. She remained maimed and disfigured, but when Thanos defeated Eternity and his consciousness expanded into the universe, she took advantage of his comatose body and stole the gauntlet from him. She reversed what he had done and banished him. Now, while she wanted to use it to take over the universe, you gotta give it to her. Managing to do what no one else could is a pretty big feat, and something to respect. And in the MCU, she's a villain turned hero, aiding after Thanos' snap, or as the MCU now refers to it, the blip, and helping the Avengers to return the world the way it was, and to finally defeat her adoptive father once and for all, despite her being the unintentional reason why the 2014 timeline Thanos was able to head on over to the present timeline, stir up a massive battle, and eventually, indirectly, cause the death of Tony Stark. We can't blame her for that. In at 5, Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock has done a lot for the Marvel Universe. He's the one who spearheaded the attack on Thanos in the 1991 Infinity Gauntlet story arc. The comic that, if you didn't catch it from our last number, was the primary basis for the MCU's Avengers Infinity War film. Warlock is the one who orchestrates the attack on Thanos after he's snapped, managing not only to recruit heroes, but cosmic entities and even Celestials. And Dr. Doom, who's like really reluctant and doesn't trust him. Actually pretty funny. Eventually, after Nebula grabs the gauntlet from Thanos, Warlock manages to convince the Mad Titan to help them get it back, and ultimately saves the day. That's without even getting into the sequel miniseries, of course. But here's the thing with Adam Warlock. While he's highly respected in the Marvel Universe, especially by the Avengers, he's also got an evil half, a Magus. There's been 3 incarnations of the Magus over the years, with the second version being one that is expelled from Adam's soul after he acquires the Infinity Gauntlet. That evil part of his soul becomes the corporeal form of the Magus, and ends up seeking out the gauntlet for himself. He even recently appeared in the Infinity War storyline as well. You know, that recent one where all the heroes got like smucked together. He was found by Gamora in a cocoon. By smucked I mean amalgamated. You get it, schmuck. And at 4, Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn is definitely a really bad dude, but the reason why he's respected by the likes of the Avengers, not including Spider-Man to be fair, is that in recent years he's fluctuated between being a baddie and being an anti-hero. But let's jump back for a sec. In contemporary comics, he went from being Peter Parker's arch-nemesis to a full-blown Avengers enemy, taking on the guise of the Iron Patriot in the process. He was once the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hammer, and even started up a team called the Dark Avengers. And that, my friends, is exactly why he ended up on our list. Aside from his intelligence and business savvy, which, the likes of Tony Stark can at least nod to, Osborn was once respected by a group of Avengers. Technically, the Dark Avengers, which just so happened to be his very own team of Avengers, but it still counts, right? Technically Avengers. And at 3, Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch's origins in the comics established her as a villain before she became a part of the second iteration of Avengers. She and her brother Pietro initially joined up with Magneto, prior to knowing that he was Daddy Dearest, might I add, and joined his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants in order to repay him for saving them from a mob. Eventually, after Magneto is abducted by the cosmic entity Stranger, the Brotherhood disassembles, and the two, feeling that their debt has been paid, end up moving on and becoming Avengers. But let's talk about the real reasons why she's on this list. She may be a hero, but her mental instability in the comics has caused her to turn her back against her peers in catastrophic ways. During Avengers Disassembled, she discovers from a mildly intoxicated Wasp that she had children with Vision once upon a time, 2 twins, and that information was hidden from her for years. Naturally, she loses it, as any person would if they found that out, except she has reality-altering abilities, which makes this bad. She resurrects villain Jack of Hearts to kill the Avengers, blowing up the Avengers mansion, and then murders Scott Lang through the explosion. She forces Vision to crash the Quinjet into the mansion and then makes him cough up pieces of himself that turn into little Ultrons, and then She-Hulk ends up ripping him in half, killing him in order to prevent more Ultrons. Wanda then uses her abilities to summon Kree warships, which then causes Hawkeye's death. And then later on, Quicksilver would manipulate her to create a world where mutants were the dominant race and Avengers didn't exist. So all in all, when Girl has a grudge, she goes hard on dishing out revenge. At the end of the day though, she is still an Avenger and a hero. So despite all this, she does have the respect of some of the members of the team, or at least the ones that she hasn't killed in the past. Moving on to number 2, Doctor Doom. Dr. Doom fits the classic villain trope of villain with a point. Now, despite all of his personality flaws, he genuinely wants the world to be the best it can be, which of course to him means he needs to be the one ruling it. Funny enough, in an alternate reality in which he does rule, it's actually the best possible outcome, despite all of the evil things that he's done. Regardless of that, Doom's behavior is dictated by strict codes he chooses to follow. Doom has been known to keep his exact word and has a code of honor. The latter led him to save Captain America from drowning because Cap had previously saved his life. He also kept Spider-Man alive once after the hero had saved him from terrorists attacking him at an airport. He also won't attack a foe who's weakened or at a severe disadvantage, since he believes a victory in that state is hollow and meaningless. In addition to that, his magical skills have gotten him the respect of characters like Doctor Strange, who once admitted that Doom had the chops to be Sorcerer Supreme. All in all, he's a narcissist, but there's some good in there. Such a complex character. And finally, in at number 1, Loki. For starters, Loki is the OG Avengers villain, the very first, and the reason the Avengers were brought together, technically speaking. In the first Avengers comic, Thor ends up needing some assistance with his dastardly brother, so he ends up working with the Hulk, Ant-Man the Wasp, and Iron Man to take on his trickster god sibling. Now this is before Cap was defrosted from his block of ice. In the process, Loki uses the Hulk to fight against them. For years he's been causing trouble for the Avengers, but he's also earned the respect of many of their members. Take Spider-Man for example. After the web-slinger helped him out, he gave Parker a favor that later, the hero cashed in to help save an innocent civilian. Parker even promised to put in a good word for Loki to other members of the superhero community. Aww. Loki has become more of an anti-hero in recent times, and despite sometimes still having his own best interests at heart, he's turned a leaf, something that several Avengers members have grown to respect. And do we even need to bring up the MCU Loki? Loki is one of the most beloved villains to appear up on the big screen, and even managed to work his way back into the hearts of our heroes, helping his brother Thor out in a big way during Thor Ragnarok. And now he's getting his own show, so that's dope.
Number 10, Deathurge. Similar to how the DC Universe has the Black Flash acting as messenger of death, Marvel decided to dip their toes into that realm as well, and out came Deathurge, a wraith-like superhuman entity with the ability to fly at some ridiculous speeds, turn intangible, and of course, pull various weapons like spears and swords out of their body. When these weapons strike Deathurge's targets, they immediately die with a blackness spreading from the spot where the weapon struck and passed through the target's body. If the weapon happens to pass through someone other than Deathurge's target, that person only feels a numbing coldness but will not actually blacken or die. Deathurge's only targets are apparently only those who have craved death and oblivion to some degree, so I guess I better be on the lookout. Not a whole lot is known about Deathurge besides the fact that he once served Oblivion and had a very close relationship with Craig Hollis. In Hollis' earlier life, Deathurge acted as both a guardian angel and a bad influence for him, goading him into dangerous situations in an attempt to awaken him to his own immortality. However, this relationship was damaged beyond repair when Hollis' girlfriend killed herself and Deathurge arrived to collect her soul, with Hollis believing that Deathurge had goaded Terry to commit suicide and from then on viewed him as a tormentor. He has been seen up against not only the Avengers but the Fantastic Four as well, and each time he has caused some serious trouble, so it's kinda weird that he hasn't had too many appearances.
Number 9. Nightmare. Originally hailing from the dream dimension, the demon known as Nightmare can imprison a being's astral form and torment them. There have been several hints of Nightmare lurking in the background. On Loki, Mobius appears to make reference to the villain's name, and although Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. might not be canon, it definitely introduced the concept of a dream dimension. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness made a statement about how dreams were actually visions into alternate universe versions of yourself, and with dreams comes nightmares. Imagine if Nightmare had been manipulating the dreams of someone like the Scarlet Witch to make her go a little bonkers. Nightmare is one of Doctor Strange's oldest foes, and it makes sense that he would show up, but I'm not entirely convinced he would be an Avengers level threat.
Number 8. Star Stalker. Varanus aka Star Stalker is a dragon-like alien monster from the planet Vormir. By wrapping himself in a cocoon, he was able to transform himself into a larger, more powerful form, known as his ionic combustion form. In this form, Varanus was able to absorb the ions of anything around him, allowing him to drain the energy of enemies such as Thor, or even shorting out Iron Man's armor. But that's not all, because he frequently used this power to gorge himself on entire planets, destroying them in the process. After attacking and defeating Skrull, this monster caught the attention of the Avengers, and although he was able to hide from them for a short period of time, Mantis was eventually able to find him and the fight ensued. Starstalker was able to dispatch the Avengers pretty easily by taunting them with stories of his origins while refusing to reveal his weakness, before spinning himself into another ionic cocoon to boost his power to destroy the Earth. Eventually, Mantis was able to figure out that his weakness was solar energy, and her and Vision used this weakness to just turn him into stone.
Last on the list of possible demons would have to be the Elder God Chthon. As the Earth's first black magician, he would make an excellent Doctor Strange villain, or even a mystical-based threat like Mephisto or Nightmare. More than that though, he was the creator of the Darkhold, that dark magical book that first showed up in WandaVision and then more recently in the Multiverse of Madness, where it corrupted the Scarlet Witch. Funnily enough, something similar happened in the comics too, only the Darkhold corrupted Wanda for the express purpose of releasing Chthon into the world. In the Darkhold story, it is Wanda who does eventually defeat Chthon with the quote-unquote help of Doctor Doom. And given her recent transgressions in WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness, it might be a nice way for her to redeem her character. Maybe.
Number 6. Cyclop. No, not Cyclops, Cyclop. Also known as One Eye for, well, obvious reasons, Cyclop was a member of an ancient insect alien race that worshipped the Dark Gods, and because of this, Cyclop was eventually chosen by the Dark Gods to find a power source for them in exchange for his race getting to conquer Earth. He was quickly able to capture the Hulk, however the other members of the Avengers were able to defeat him relatively easily, and this resulted in Cyclop losing the Hulk. Deemed as incompetent, the Dark Gods abandoned him as their agent, and he was dumped into the microverse by them, with no way to return to his original size or home world. Still wanting to impress the Dark Gods in any possible way, he devised and executed a plan that turned him into the god of the microverse. He was confronted by the Hulk and Jarella, but managed to hypnotize and enslave the Hulk. However, that didn't last for too long, so out of desperation, Cyclops just accidentally annihilated himself with one of his devices. Poor little evil guy.
Number 5. Doctor Doom. Once Marvel announced a Fantastic Four film was on the horizon, they pretty much confirmed that we would see Doctor Doom, one of the most famous supervillains in Marvel's lineup. It's incredibly unlikely that they'd leave him out of the new adaptation. Although Doctor Doom was introduced as a Fantastic Four foe, he has the resources and power, both magical and technological, to take on the current MCU Avengers, easily. We can also easily see Earth's mightiest heroes meeting the MCU's Doom within the next few years. There's even the possibility of Doom becoming the next big bad of the MCU. Kevin Feige has been dropping some not so subtle hints about the possibility of Secret Wars taking place within the MCU, and no matter which version they adapt, Doctor Doom is a crucial character in all those stories. Personally, I hope it's the 2015 version, as we have already heard mention of the incursions from Reed Richards, and with the sacred timeline going into complete upheaval, it's possible that could be an incursion starting event. Just Give me God Emperor Doom already!
Number 4, Sons of the Serpent. Now over the years there have been a total of 7 iterations of the Sons of the Serpent, so let's make our way through all of them, shall we? This group was initially formed by General Chen, and let's just say they were all about doing some pretty awful things against non-natives of their country. The original group was disbanded by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers after they unmasked General Chen as their leader. And then the second group didn't show up until a little bit while later, but they were also quickly defeated and disbanded by the Avengers and Black Panther. Financed by J.C. Pennyworth, the third iteration was all about destroying buildings in Harlem, but the Defenders had no trouble stopping them. Head over to LA after and you'd find the fourth iteration selling drugs and weapons under the leadership of the Hate Monger. Thankfully, War Machine shut them down for good and cut off all of their suppliers as well. The fifth iteration was super into magic and mysticism and led by Serpent Man himself, however it's actually unknown if they were ever stopped, so honestly they could be practicing to this very day. The six Sons of the Serpent controlled New York's justice system for a period of time, and they would have been a much bigger threat had they not been stopped by Daredevil. And then finally, the seventh iteration of the team went back to their roots and were patrolling the American border, not letting anyone into the country unless they were a citizen. Not only that though, they were also sending some of these immigrants to Carl Malice as test subjects. Thankfully though, Captain America caught wind of this and their villainous ways were put to an end.
Number 3, Galactus. In Eternals, we learn that unborn Celestials are planted inside planets across the universe waiting for intelligent life to reach a point in which those Celestials can use that energy to be born, destroy said planet, and begin creating another sun that will power another galaxy in the place of the one destroyed. Being an ancient universe entity, Galactus is an all-powerful cosmic being that acts as a balance of power in the current universe. He does this by devouring planets throughout the cosmos as a source of energy to stay alive. It is more likely than not that Arishem the Judge, a Celestial, considers the death of a baby Celestial as a punishable offense. Galactus could be in the MCU as a tool the Celestials use to devour planets. Galactus often prides himself as a force of balance in the universe, and with Earth being such a powerhouse planet in the cosmos, its failed emergence is likely to upset the balance of things. Or, what if Galactus was actually hunting planets with the immense amount of energy a Celestial seed would provide? This cosmic being is known for having a huge appetite that can only be satisfied by consuming the energy of planets. With certain planets, including Earth, hosting a celestial seed inside of them, a Herald of Galactus could view it as a great source of energy to keep Galactus fed. And that's not even mentioning the Fantastic Four. They're also famous for doing battle with Galactus. He also shares a connection with another famous Marvel character. There are lots of reasons he could show up.
Number 2, the Circus of Crime. Now much like the Sons of the Serpent, the Circus of Crime has gone through many iterations, but let's just focus on the modern eras this time. Currently composed of the Ringmaster aka Maynard Tybalt, Bruto the Strongman, Clown, Tina the Fat Lady, and the Fire Eater, the Circus of Crime is kind of exactly what you'd expect after hearing their name. A circus that does crime. They followed a general formula while committing their crimes. They would give a performance before a large audience, then at some point, the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device concealed in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members would then rob the audience, who wouldn't remember anything about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and then the performance would just continue. They clashed with superheroes on a pretty regular basis, the most notable being the Hulk, Spider-Man, and of course the Avengers. Funnily enough though, one time Matt Murdock himself offered to defend them in court after having helped defeat them alongside Spider-Man. Crazy.
Number 1, The Beyonder. The original Secret Wars series, initiated by Marvel Comics in the 80s, was spearheaded by a cosmic entity known as the Beyonder, who observed the multiversal heroes and villains and, wishing to know more about human nature and conflict, transported them to an alternate world he created known as Battle World, made out of a mishmash of parts of Earth and other planets in the galaxy. The Beyonder brought together Marvel superheroes and villains onto this world, such as the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and Spider-Man, including antagonists Dr. Octopus, Kang the Conqueror, and most importantly, Molecule Man and Dr. Doom. The threat of multiversal incursions that played a large part in the 2015 Secret Wars has already been established in 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and we can strongly suspect Dr. Doom will be introduced very soon. After Thanos, the MCU needs a main villain with another more original motive. The Beyonder's desire to understand human nature allows for interesting narrative possibilities and philosophical discussions. Why conflict is inevitable, why people always want to achieve something more, and why imperfection makes life worth living are some of the themes the culmination of the MCU's Phase 5 could tackle. Not to mention, Beyonder is leagues and bounds beyond the power of Thanos.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Kang the Conqueror. Also known as Nathaniel Richards, Kang the Conqueror is actually already cast in the live-action MCU, with Jonathan Majors set to play him in Ant-Man 3. But who is Kang? Why is this such a big deal? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on pretty much any superhero. He's insanely smart, and of course he travels with armies, hence the toughness behind him. Now these armies are built in a similar fashion sense, each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry. The time travel stuff doesn't come without consequence though, as Kang travels more and more through time. He creates time-displaced duplicates. And as we saw in Avengers Endgame, it can be quite tricky to figure out how to fix time. I think this is the perfect time to introduce a time-hopping villain, especially for Ant-Man, who's now a big-time Avenger who's been around the quantum block a few times. What do you guys think Kang's goal is going to be in Ant-Man 3? Do you think he's going to clean up these timelines, or do you think he's just pissed off and now he wants to just attack anybody who's messed with the quantum realm? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. We love hearing your feedback as well. And before we head on over to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video, that would help out a lot at the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. And let's keep on going with this list. Number 9, the Magus. Making his comic book debut in New Mutants issue 18, the Magus is a powerful enemy of Adam Warlock. He travels alongside Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy comic books, and in one of the many after-credit scenes for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Adam Warlock's name was briefly mentioned. Now this is important because the Magus is actually an enemy of Adam Warlock. He's a tyrant and a god, and now he appears as a ghostly form because, well, he's an evil version of Adam Warlock from the future. Crazy. So Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave when they were trying to create these perfect invincible beings. They created Adam, and we see this in one of those after credit scenes where she goes, "I shall name him Adam." And then everyone in the theater knows what's coming, they know what's coming up. It was exciting, it was a big moment. So Adam, during his travels, runs into the oppressive Universal Church of Truth and their god being the Magus. He was then shocked to see that the Magus is a dark, twisted version of himself, obsessed with the Infinity Stones, much like Thanos' desire. So could we see Adam come out of his glowing birthing pod and stir up some more Infinity Gem madness in the MCU? Yes, let's hope so. I think if the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 wasn't delayed or pushed on to later, we would have seen this already in motion, maybe in WandaVision. Number 8. Taskmaster. He's the big bad villain coming with the Black Widow movie, which we're still eagerly awaiting for. But just who is this hooded, shadowy fighter from the trailers? Taskmaster made his comic book debut back in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters, he is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. And his whole thing that makes him special is that he can replicate your physical skills. He has this photographic reflex memory. So we can watch a video of Black Widow take down some evil henchmen, and then bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows that choreography. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains, agents, henchmen, and even some heroes. He learned how to twirl a lasso by watching Cowboys on TV, and he learned how to play basketball by watching the NBA. He's kind of amazing. And he chose to be a villain instead of being an NBA superstar. What a clown. He's quite impressive. I mean, most Hydra agents, AIM troopers, Hellfire Club enforcers, and other big bad groups, they all most likely graduated from the Taskmaster Academy for Henchmen. And I'm super excited to see him in action in Black Widow. I'll gladly wait longer and longer and longer just so I can see him in IMAX hucking a shield. It's gonna be so worth the wait. Mwah. Number 7, Scarlet Witch. No more mutants. The 3 words that changed everything. So Scarlet Witch, okay, we're all counting down the days until the next episode of WandaVision because now it's cooking. Because now we can finally see an evil Wanda Maximoff. More evil than when she was in Ultron. That didn't really, we don't count that. She's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did, of course, join the Avengers. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during the events of M-Day, she spoke those 3 words, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or killed. So after she said those 3 words, that large number that ended up being affected was somewhere around 986,000 people, only leaving a couple hundred mutants left. Now, with the last 2 episodes of WandaVision sneaking up, it's more than likely that we'll see Wanda lean into this villain part. I mean, she's already expanded the Hex to a much larger scale, and now everybody's trapped prepping for the circus, eating swords, talking to the camera, the whole sitcom life, living up the hashtag sitcom life, you know? Tyler Hayward at one point in a previous episode asks if Wanda has a Avengers alias. but they make it very clear that she doesn't. This is almost to remind the audience that she hasn't got a cool nickname yet. So when the name the Scarlet Witch comes in, that'll be a big deal because that'll be her being marked as a villain with the name Scarlet Witch. With this whole Agatha Harkness witch stuff coming into play, I think we're very close to seeing Wanda flip to the dark side. At least for a little bit, until Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out, and then they have to make her not evil and help out and stuff. It's gonna be a whole thing. This is just a start. Number 6, Morgan Le Fay. Medieval witches and alternate timelines. I mean, that should say enough right there. She made her first appearance in the Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955. And Morgan Le Fay is based off of the Arthurian legend, so she's got a little bit of King Arthur, a little bit of evil magic, and 100% reason to remember the name. She's tried to rule the world many times, specifically after the events of Onslaught, where the Avengers go to an alternate Earth, and when they get back in Heroes Reborn, The Return, we have this new world filled with mythical creatures, of course being ran by Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, she got her hands on the Norn Stones and then made Scarlet Witch add her magic to the fun mix as well. So maybe we'll see that come to play as well. We got a lot of playing room with Scarlet Witch and witchcraft and all that magical stuff. It's gonna be crazy. Number 5, the Kree Skrull Empire. They made their comic debut in Fantastic Four issue 2 back in 1962. A lot of 2s in there. And they made their Marvel Cinematic debut only a couple years ago in Captain Marvel. But who are the Skrulls? Well, they're a race of shapeshifters from the Andromeda Galaxy, and they look like green humans almost, except much more powerful and ferocious. They lived on the homeworld of Skrullos in the Drock system, and I loved watching these guys in Captain Marvel. They were a lot of fun, and it was nice to see them actually not be the main villain in the movie. Usually we have these evil gods or these crazy insane robots, but to see the villains of that movie end up wanting just the same chances of survival as humans made it more touchy, more emotional. You know, they're carrying around kids, just looking after their own. Like, it's nice. It was a nice change of pace. Even for a fake out, it was still rewarding. It was still fun. So yeah, they're expert shapeshifters. They can transform into anything, organic or non-organic, as long as it's solid. They can't adapt to superpowers unless you're a Super Skrull, which, I mean, those guys you don't want to play around with. The Kree Skrull War is amongst one of the biggest threats to the Avengers because they both believe that the Earth is theirs to claim. See, the Kree performed experiments on humans millennia ago, and then they actually caused the creation of Inhumans. And the Skrulls just see Earth as their new homeworld since theirs was destroyed by Galactus. So a good comic to check out with them would be the 1974 storyline, The Kree Skrull War by Roy Thomas. Avengers 89 to 97. Number 4, Doctor Doom. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 5, Victor Von Doom likes to go head to head with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. He's one of the most popular Marvel villains ever, and he's not easy to forget. Just by looking at him, he's one of the coolest guys, I think. He thinks he's right. He thinks that he'll actually do a good job ruling the world. I mean, he's so smart, maybe he's correct. Maybe he could do it, but he's kind of evil, so we don't want to see it get to that point. He is the ruler of the land Latveria, and he really cares about this place in Fantastic Four 246. We see this compassion come to play in full force. So why the taste for ruling? Where did this all start, right? Well, each supervillain has their own path, and for Victor, that path started turning to the dark side before he was even born. You see, his mother was a Latverian woman, and she liked to get close to demons. I mean, perhaps a little too close. And after Victor was born, she would attempt to tap into these demonic powers herself, and her clan didn't like that, so they took her out. Sad stuff. So him and his dad were like, okay, see ya, this place sucks, we're out of here. Sadly, during this escape, his dad ended up freezing, and then he had to go on by himself as just a young boy. Then he figured he'd try this demonic power tapping himself later on in life, and then with no luck, he turned to his brain power, and then he soon met Reed Richards when he was in school. So that sad origin plus the college hazing, I mean, this is a villain backstory in the making. Number 3, Loki. Arguably one of the finest characters of the MCU, Loki is the adoptive son of Odin, but who are his real parents? Who is he? What is he doing? Why is he like this? Well, Loki was left as a baby. He was abandoned in his homeworld of Jotunheim, and during a battle, Odin had found this lost child and took him on as his own. What a sweet man, what a sweet gentle giant. So we see this play out in the first Thor movie back in 2011. And then when Loki finds out his motives are peddled by being the offspring of an evil frost giant, he gets a little upset, naturally. He always felt different growing up and often looked down on Thor as he got the most attention and love. Must have been those curly blonde waves. I mean, come on. Odin had chosen not to tell Loki about his true heritage, and he raised him as one of his own. and he's the villain that we love to hate. I'm honestly super excited to see the God of Mischief hop around time in the Loki show coming up. We can't get enough Tom Hiddleston as this role, and I'll happily wait week after week to see him cause more MCU mischief. Happily. Number 2. Ultron. In the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind Ultron, but in the comics it was actually Hank Pym. Ultron made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers 54, and beneath the Crimson Cowl, we discover that he is indeed Ultron Pym. See, in the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron. There are many versions of Ultron, seeing as he constantly wants to upgrade himself to be bigger and badder. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym, so he figured it needed a personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is basically Tony Stark, but with jealousy issues and a lot more metal. A good example of his ruling comes from the Age of Ultron from 2013. Like right off the bat, we can see a dark, life-drained world, and Spider-Man wakes up like, what'd I miss? Ultron is attacking from the future. That's how ahead of the game he is in this comic. And I can't lie, I was really excited for the Age of Ultron movie in the MCU. Like, the trailer made him seem so dark and ominous. Even his voice was badass. And then in the movie, he just sounds like normal James Spader, and he just walks around talking about omelets. There's rumors that he'll return for WandaVision, but I mean, maybe it's best to leave him in 2015, at least for a bit longer. And finally, number 1. Thanos. You know who this guy is, come on. We first saw him in the after credit scene of Avengers 1 and 2, and then we saw him sitting down in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we saw him snap away half of all life in the universe in Avengers Infinity War. The Mad Titan first made his comic book debut back in Iron Man issue 55, and funny enough, Robert Downey Jr. is 55 years old, so just a coincidence, literally just a coincidence. So we all know how powerful Thanos is with the Infinity Gauntlet, but if you still haven't seen the movie, I'll touch briefly on those. But look, without the Gauntlet, Thanos is still a villain you don't want to mess around with. He is still a Mad Titan. He was born on the Saturn moon Titan, both of his parents were Eternals, and due to the genetic disorder known as the Deviant Syndrome, his mother actually tried to take him out at first sight. So he's got a pretty dark history already. He got payback when he took out his entire family just to impress Death. And then in the opening of Avengers Infinity War, we see Thanos level the Hulk without even using a single stone. That's how strong this guy is. He just, right in the neck, you're done. But then once he gets the 6 Infinity Stones, he has control over each cosmic power. Those of course being soul, time, power, reality, space, and mind. Now after he snapped his fingers and half of all life disappeared, in the comics he does this to get the attention of Death. But in the movie he does so to be a savior, because you know, too many mouths to feed, not enough to go around. I mean, you could just snap some Cinnamon Toast Crunch into everybody's home. That would be a great start, Thanos. Just an idea. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Mojo. I'll start this list off with a rather fun one. Not that any villain isn't fun, but when Mojo's involved, it always gets a little too weird in some way. He made his first debut in Longshot issue 3. Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. So we're all actors. I'm in your screen right now. I'm actually part of Mojo's universe. I'm not even real. And his power increases the more viewers that he gets for this interdimensional TV show. So if you subscribe and like this video, maybe I'll get more powerful too, who knows? He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings. They're from a planet called Mojo World, of course, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So it's all about him, we get it. He messes with the Avengers in a pretty dramatic way as well, especially in Avengers Annual 1. The Avengers of the Supernatural. Wow, there is a title right there. So in this issue, Mojo abducted the Avengers and created another supernatural version of the team. And if that wasn't weird enough, he made them participate in this reality show called Martian Transylvania Superhero Mutant Monster Hunter High School, which is just a mouthful. Basically, the mutants of the Unity Division were goths, the others were football players and cheerleaders, and the Avengers of the Supernatural were nerds. So he likes to play it weird. And before we continue on with this list of Avengers villains, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us more power by giving us a like down there, and if you haven't subscribed already, you might as well click that, and then you can see all our videos pop up. We do all the work for you. We'll just show up in your phone. Number 9, the Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka the Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the canisters broke open, covering him in gamma radiation. God, everybody is so clumsy in comics all the time. Just so many spills. So of course, after the spill, Stearns survived just like Banner did after his gamma accident, but the only difference was it affected him in a much different way. See, he didn't get angrier, he got smarter and smarter, because now his brain could absorb so much more and more information. It actually got to a point where his physical body started to mutate. So now he has this giant green brain head. His head just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It looks like a gushy balloon, just about to pop any second. Of course he's a villain. Look at his head. I mean, no offense, but come on, I'd be upset too. That's all I'm saying. I'd be pretty upset. He started to refer to himself as the leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind, and he clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding once. He's kind of a jerk. But he's gone after the Avengers as well. When the Red Hulk gave Stearns Red Gamma treatment to enhance him even more, becoming the Red Leader, he became a member of the Thunderbolts. Number 8, the Mandarin. Ah yes, the first time Marvel told us that the popular enhanced individual was actually an actor all along. The Mandarin. He was in Iron Man 3, kind of. I mean, I'm including him on this list because that version wasn't even close to what he's really like. He made his first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 50. While exploring the inside of a cave in the Valley of the Spirits, he found an alien ship and a passenger still in there as well, named Axon Carr. But while he was there, he also saw 10 rings, these powerful rings, each representing a new power. So he took them, because he's a villain. Then after finishing off the alien pilot, he began to study these rings and he began mastering them as well. So if he wears them all at once, his mind will be reached by the spirits trapped within the rings. Yeah, he's a pretty sick villain. And then in Iron Man 3, his name's Trevor and he just crushes beer. Number 7, Grim Reaper. This next one we thought we were gonna see in WandaVision, but we thought wrong. We thought maybe if it wasn't Mephisto, it's probably Grim Reaper, but we were wrong on both. The Grim Reaper did not show up, but his silhouette did for a hot second, maybe. Eric Williams made his debut back in Avengers issue 52. He's the brother of Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man. He was considered a black sheep of the family, and when he was younger, he accidentally burnt down his house after, you guessed it, being clumsy with chemicals. The usual. So his brother felt responsible for not stopping him or being there for him when watching him. So after that, he began to watch him closely, a little bit too close, because Eric then became rebellious because of the supervision, and then soon he ended up with the Magia in Las Vegas, while his brother stayed and took over the family business. So with the business failing, no thanks to Stark being the top dog in innovation, he turns to his brother for some mob help to get things going again. So Simon embezzled money with Eric, but Simon got caught and thrown into the slammer. Went thrown right to jail. So Baron Zemo approached him, asked for help to take out the Avengers, and revenge on Stark was included, so he was like, sure, this sounds like a pretty sweet gig. So then he got turned into Wonder Man, but he ended up saving the Avengers from Zemo's trap. He turned, he went good guy. But his brother, Eric, he heard of Simon's untimely departure, so he got angry and felt tremendous guilt after this. So he contacted the Tinkerer, who gave him a scythe. Then he took on the name of Grim Reaper, and voila, we now have a pretty badass villain. Number 6, Enchantress, aka Amora. She made her first debut in Journey into Mystery issue 103, and she has a love-hate relationship with Thor. And I'm not gonna lie, she's got a pretty sweet gig. She's got multiple mansions throughout the 9 realms, and she can make gold and diamonds with her tears. So even if she gets stood up on prom, she's gonna cry a few diamonds, and then she has more bling for the next date. So it's a win-win. She's really good at seducing people as well, like Scourge, for example. She would seduce him into helping her with her evil plans. But Amora wouldn't follow through with her side of the deal. She would just play hard to get, and she would mess with his mind and his heart. Now in the comics, she was sent by Odin to take out Jane Foster, but when she tried to attack Jane, of course, her love Thor intervened, and that's when she was banished to Earth by Odin. And then her next logical step as a villain is to join the Masters of Evil and get in line for taking down Thor or any of his annoying super teammates. Her tool is seduction, just one kiss, and that's all it takes to make you fall under her control. She doesn't have too much experience with hand-to-hand combat because she doesn't really need it. She just gets other dudes to fight her battles for her. What a boss. Number 5. Kang. This guy we can actually look forward to knowing more about soon, as he's confirmed for the next Ant-Man sequel with actor Jonathan Majors set to play him. But just who is Kang the Conqueror? Why is this a big deal for the Avengers? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many, many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on beings from any of those timelines. He's super smart and of course travels with armies, with each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry, so the fights aren't exactly easy by any means. The time travel stuff also doesn't come without consequence either. See, as Kang travels more and more through time, he creates time-displaced duplicates, and with the cosmic multiversal route that Marvel's going with now in the MCU, and especially with Loki's show, we could probably look forward to some more mind-bending battles. Number 4, Taskmaster. Taskmaster made his first comic book debut in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. Although he is one guy, he has this ability where he can copy your every move. So he can replicate your physical skills. He has photographic reflexes, so he can watch Black Widow take down an evil henchman, and bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows how to do the same type of combat as well. He's actually the villain of the Black Widow movie, but that has has yet to come out due to COVID delays, so the general public doesn't really know how cool this guy is. Yet. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains and agents, one of those agents being US agent John Walker, who is currently turning heads for all the wrong reasons in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who taught Walker how to throw Cap's shield so well. In Avengers issue 196, he was able to capture Yellow Jacket, the Wasp, and Ant-Man, and then when the rest of the team showed up, he took them on as well, only being defeated because he could not predict the movements of the robot Jocasta. Otherwise, it's a tough battle, this one for sure. Number 3, Mephisto. While on the topic of characters that we wanted to see in the MCU, I of course gotta talk about the devil himself. He made his first appearance as a serpent in Bible Tales for Young Folk issue 1, but he made his first full appearance as Mephisto in Silver Surfer issue 3. I don't think I have to explain too much about this guy or why he's a threat. I mean, he's Satan. He's the literal devil of the Marvel Universe. He lives comfortably in hell with lesser demons that serve him. The reason we thought we were gonna get Mephisto in WandaVision goes back to something he did in the comics, which was kind of a big deal. The comic was Avengers West Coast Volume 2, issue 52. We find out the truth behind Scarlet Witch's children, Billy and Tommy, who were in WandaVision. Now it turns out the 5 pieces of Pandemonium's soul were actually Mephisto's. So Mephisto tricked Pandemonium and gathered beings possessing the appropriate fragments, and 2 of those 5 fragments just happened to be children of the Scarlet Witch and the Vision. So when Pandemonium arrived, he took the kids, which in turn gave Mephisto full strength, and this left Scarlet Witch having a breakdown. Mephisto's awesome. His deals are always crazy. Like after the comic Civil War, when everybody knew Spider-Man's identity, Spider-Man had to make a deal with Mephisto in order to save Aunt May because she got shot because he revealed his name to the public. So he's pretty wild. That's just one of many, many horrible deals. Number 2, MODOK. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, MODOK was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. So enter Project MODOK. Spelt with a C at the end, not a K, that's important. So MODOK stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. Sounds like the perfect tool to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. I mean, he's already a villain. You guys are just kind of making this happen for him. The scientists did not prepare that with great power comes great superiority, so it wasn't long before MODOK overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, MODOK, which stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. He's the big bad villain in the new Avengers PS4 game, and he's as crazy as it sounds in that game as well. And finally, number 1, Morgan Le Fay. Now, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe leaning into the witch madness for the conclusion of WandaVision, we might actually get to see Morgan Le Fay on the big screen soon enough. She made her first appearance in Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955, and she's been a recurring villain to the Avengers in the comics for a while now. And when the Dark Avengers were formed by Norman Osborn, Morgan was their first enemy to face off against. She's a powerful spellcaster, one of those spells being reality warping by using these Norn stones. So she packs a punch. Elizabeth Hurley actually plays Morgan Le Fay in the show Runaways, and she's great when it comes to these witchy, devilish roles. I mean, she literally played the devil in the movie Bedazzled as well, which is pretty funny. She was made for the role, it seems.
The Avengers have had their fair share of enemies throughout the comics and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But which villain do you always feel this strange connection to? Which villain keeps you coming back for more? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. This is Top 10 Nerd and I am your host, Amanda McKnight. Today we'll be counting down the top 10 hottest Avenger villains. Ooh, that's so hot. Those villains that you just can't get enough of for some weird reason. In fact, they might even get you rooting for them instead, or have you convinced that the Avengers should maybe just give up and simply join their sexiness. Let's get into it. Number 10, Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch isn't being ranked low for hotness, just FYI, as you all know how much I love Wanda just all around, so I would never do that to her. But I did think to rank her lower because I just feel bad that we're always calling her a villain on this channel, especially because, you know, she is a hero, but especially an Avengers villain, as Wanda is also known for being a key member member of that team herself. Still, there have been a few times when Wanda has seemingly been at odds against her teammates. There are the times she has struggled to regain or maintain control over herself when Chthon has threatened to possess her. And there's House of M as well as Axis. And in the MCU, the time she mistakenly fought against the Avengers in the beginning of Age of Ultron, and when she caused mayhem without really meaning to in WandaVision, when her grief turned her into a powerful yet misguided villain. Basically, she's been a villain a lot, but I don't want to call her a villain, and I already know that she's hot, so number 10 for Wanda today. Number 9, Maximus the Mad. Maximus might not always be an Avengers villain, but he has definitely worked against them and his brother on more than one occasion. What makes Maximus so attractive? Well, he's definitely one of those tall, dark, and mad types, which honestly, I gotta say, I'm into it. After all, conventional thinking is just so boring and it's so safe, and Maximus is definitely neither of those things. He's not boring and he is not safe. Maximus is also quite intelligent, and while he is often crazy, he has also claimed insanity before as a means of escaping punishment. So he might not be quite as crazy as you think all the time. Not only has he threatened his brother's reign as king of the Inhumans, having usurped him multiple times in the past temporarily, but he also has threatened the Earth in the past. The entire Earth, which also obviously brought him into direct conflict with the Avengers. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving this channel, be sure to hit that thumbs up, be sure to smash that subscribe, you know, do all the cool things that us YouTubers ask you to do. And thank you. Thank you for doing them. It really does help us. So thank you. Number 8. Viper, or rather Madam Hydra as she was once known. Ophelia Sarkinson has not only been a longtime enemy of Captain America in the comics, but is also known for, at times, coming into conflict with the Avengers. In fact, she even attempted to place a spy in their midst, although this only resulted in her spy, who appeared to be Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, but was actually the Skrull Queen at the time, being recruited to also play double agent for the Avengers and Captain America against both S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. Didn't quite work out. Ophelia is known for being sneaky, deadly, and manipulative, but she also looks damn good while doing all three. Number 7. Grandmaster. The Grandmaster in the comics is known as one of the Elders of the Universe. He actually made his first appearance in Avengers issue number 69 back in the day. He quickly became known as an Avengers villain when he challenged Kang to a game where they would each pit their own team of champions against one another. Kang chose the Avengers as his champions in the fight, and Grandmaster made his own team himself, dubbing them the Squadron Sinister. You might actually recognize that team, as an alternate version of them also appeared in the comics recently during the Heroes Reborn event, where they were known as the Squadron Supreme. Although Grandmaster isn't particularly sexy in the comics, his MCU counterpart is quite attractive, as he's portrayed by one of the most handsome and charismatic men alive, Jeff Goldblum. And if anyone wants to fight me about that, I'll see you in the comments. Number 6. Dark Avengers. I mean, not all of the Dark Avengers are sexy, but I think overall they're a pretty hot team, especially considering they're made up of some really bad and really deadly people. Among the ranks of the hottest Dark Avengers are Moonstone as Miss Marvel, Bullseye as Hawkeye, Daken as Wolverine, Sentry, Ares, and Yelena Belova, who was affiliated with the team for a time, although it was kinda later revealed that Yelena likely wasn't actually Yelena for most or for all of that time. The Dark Avengers is also an attractive group in the sense that they are still playing the role of heroes. Now, they might not always play the role well, but there is something sexy about seeing someone you know as bad playing the part of someone who is heroic. I guess it's just fun to see villains become heroes, or at least, you know, pretend to be heroes. I like when bad people are good, even if they're not really good. You know? Is that a thing? I don't know. Number 5. Queen Veronki. Or Veronke? I never know if I'm saying her name right, so I'm just gonna apologize to the queen if I'm saying it wrong. I think Skrulls are some of the hottest enemies of the Avengers out there, namely because they could shapeshift into whatever hotness they wanted, or that their opponent desired if they so chose. Shapeshifters are always the hottest because all options of beauty are basically possible to them. And beauty, after all, is very much subjective when it comes to what we define it as. It really depends on, you know, your personal preferences. Queen Veronki spent much of her time disguised as Spider-Woman while infiltrating Earth, which I also think is a pretty hot form overall. Although not so hot in the sense that this reveal kind of wreaked havoc with Jessica Drew's character development throughout the recent years. Definitely a hot form, but not a hot thing to do. How dare you do that to Spider-Woman? Oh, Queen Veronki. Number 4, Loki. Real talk, I almost forgot to mention Loki on this list, but fortunately I caught myself before I straight up just left him off. I would have been so disappointed in myself if that had happened. Loki is an amazing villain who is also known for being a sometime shapeshifter and an all-the-time trickster. Loki has taken on many forms before, and even for a time was known as Lady Loki when he stole the body of Thor's love, Lady Sif. He also posed as Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, attempting to bend the Avengers to his will and create and lead his own team. All in all, Loki is a villain who cannot be trusted. But the fact that almost everything is a game or illusion to them is something that makes Loki so endearing. Even though he's often a liar, you kinda wanna believe him. Loki was so charming, he even fell for a version of himself when he crossed paths with the Loki variant Sylvie in the Loki Disney Plus streaming show. You know also that you're hot if you're falling in love with yourself. Number 3, Ultron. I know this might seem like a weird pick to some, but remember when Ultron was a hot lady? This was during the Ultron Initiative, back when Frank Cho was drawing Ultron and basically decided he wanted to draw a really hot and naked Janet Van Dyne as his Ultron. And honestly, I gotta say, Ultron be looking pretty good here, I cannot deny. Although the reasoning for Ultron wanting to look this way was not quite as solid as the overall appearance of the character. Still, Ultron is kinda hot even when appearing as a masculine automaton. As I've said before in previous lists, I personally think robots deserve love too, and Ultron is really no exception to that rule. Even though, yeah, he does kind of want to destroy all of humanity, but you know, what if we deserve it? And also, what if Ultron just didn't get enough hugs? Did you ever think of that? Maybe if we just gave him some hugs, he'd be good. I'm very optimistic about robots. I'm like, robots don't want to destroy the world, they just want hugs, that's it. Number 2, Enchantress. Enchantress exists to be hot, literally. She is meant to be the perfect woman in terms of her appearance, which allows her often to get what she wants from anyone who might be attracted to her. Now, often in the comics, this means Enchantress will leverage her looks and appearance into manipulating men into doing her bidding or helping her in some other way, by granting her favors or power. However, this doesn't always work in her favor, as just because Enchantress is beautiful and impossibly powerful when it comes to her magical skills, she's simply not the best at everything. Though I would say in most cases she is almost always at least second best, which definitely counts for something and is still pretty impressive. I don't know how I feel about Enchantress's attitude though. I feel like sometimes I'm like, your attitude is not very hot, but you yourself are pretty hot. Also, you're like real powerful, so that's pretty hot. Number 1, Kang. So not only is Kang a hottie in the comics, okay, so maybe he's not quite a hottie in the comics, but he's definitely 100% a hottie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he's played by Jonathan Majors. Not only did Majors do a great job of introducing us to this enigmatic time-traveling multiversal villain in the season 1 finale of Loki, but he will also be allowing us to fall in love with multiple different Kangs, I'm sure, as we continue to meet him again and again throughout the franchise. After all, the Kang we met wasn't even the most deadly version, and undoubtedly we are going to be in for a real sexy and fun treat when we run into him again, or another version of him, in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I just hope the Kang truly gets to become the next big bad in the MCU, as he so deserves that. Also, I just want more Jonathan Majors because he's just great, so yes, give me that, please.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Sandman. William Baker entered the world of comics in 1963 with Amazing Spider-Man issue 4. He was seen as one of the main villains in Spider-Man 3, and yes, he was at one point an Avenger, who knew? So when Flint Marko held the mantle of Sandman, he bumped into the Thing, and they had a little heart-to-heart, a little chat about life, and how to use your abilities perhaps for, for good. So he started to help Spider-Man a bit here and there, and then in Avengers issue 329, Captain America announced a new Avengers team, and on that roster was the Sandman. He was one of the 7 reserve members. He of course didn't last because, well, he was a reserve member for one, and coming from the villain side already, I'm sure he had one foot out the door anyways. Shame. Number 9, Sentry. Making his first appearance in Sentry issue 1, of course, Robert Reynolds was a struggling addict who made his way into a laboratory and discovered something called the Golden Sentry Serum. So of course he consumed it, and then he got the surprise of a lifetime when he was then given the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. That's a lot of power. That plus a homemade costume equals a brand new superhero. Robert fought alongside the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, then the New Avengers. Things changed for Robert when Norman Osborn decided to put together a little team of his own, the Dark Avengers. So Sentry was also once a Horseman of Death, serving alongside Banshee, Grim Reaper, and Daken. He even considered himself as the heir to Apocalypse at one point, so definitely not an Avenger anymore, for sure. Number 8, Namor. King Namor is of course Marvel's version of Aquaman. He's the king of the seas, and he's also not a fan of metahumans, surprisingly. He mostly would go head to head with Black Panther and Wakanda. He wasn't a fan of Wakanda. He often attacked it quite a bit. He was asked to join the Avengers back in 1963 in Avengers issue 16, but he declined. Too cool for school. We get it. Alright, cool. He did join for a brief amount of time though, but when the Avengers vs. X-Men happened, he stood with the X-Men and he fought Luke Cage and the Thing. What a traitor. I mean, he's not the worst, but if you're not with the Avengers, you're clearly against them. Especially after you've helped them out for a bit and then you change your mind? Come on, dude. Number 7. The Incredible Hulk. So Thor Ragnarok was loosely based off the Planet Hulk storyline. I say loosely because, well, the comics, that story didn't end up going so well, obviously. Because on Sakaar, the rocket that he arrived in ended up blowing to smithereens, causing some casualties that left the Hulk a little heartbroken, to say the least. So he rolls his shoulders back a few times, and then he heads back to Earth, and thus begins the World War Hulk storyline. He just destroys everybody. It's so scary. I mean, all the heroes that Earth has come to love just in the path of this death train. Like, he locks the Illuminati in Madison Square Garden and then makes them fight to the death. It's like Madison Square Up Garden. I mean, once you spend enough time on Sakaar, I guess it becomes second nature. I don't know. The whole story is a bloody good mess. It's great seeing the panic on the Avengers' faces the entire time because they know that they're screwed, and that's what makes it real and scary. Number 6, Sabretooth. Victor Creed made his debut in Iron Fist issue 14, and he's been known as one of Wolverine's biggest rivals. But during the Avengers X-Men Axis storyline, the Red Skull stole the brain of Charles Xavier, and he planned to wipe out all of mutant kind. And then in book 2, we see the inversion, where good goes bad and bad goes good. Interesting time, because Doctor Doom and Scarlet Witch cast a spell, so now Sabretooth was on the good side. So after the dust settled, Iron Man made it so that Sabretooth wouldn't flip back, so Sabretooth joined the Avengers Unity Division. This didn't last forever, and recently in House of X issue 6, Sabretooth faced trial among the Quiet Council, and let's just say he ended up swallowed by Krakoa below the surface, where he's trapped in a state of permanent stasis for the rest of his life. How comfortable. I mean, he kind of made it easy for them too. He clearly didn't fight for his case. Number 5, Hawkeye. In the MCU, Hawkeye's had it pretty rough. I mean, by the time Avengers Endgame rolled out, Clint had lost his entire family, and then 5 years after Thanos snapped his fingers, we catch up with him in Tokyo, and he's not the same guy that we once knew. Now he's taken heads and he's taken names. We get our first look at Ronan. Now, I know that Natasha meets up with him and they have a beautiful moment, and then he rejoins the team. He even volunteers to test the time travel tech himself. But if we look back at Avengers 1, Hawkeye is a villain for like most of that movie. He turns evil before the opening title even pops up on screen. He's the guy who took down the helicarrier. He almost killed everybody on that boat. Now, I know Loki had a scepter and that caused it, so if we look at Avengers 1 and Avengers Endgame, I think it's safe to meet in the middle and say that the MCU Hawkeye has been somewhat of a Avenger who turned into a villain, at least for a bit. Number 4, Quicksilver. Pietro Maximoff is the twin brother of Wanda Maximoff, and in Avengers West Coast issue 57, back in 1965, he joined the team. Pietro has been trouble for the team for a long time. I mean, he convinced Wanda to do what she did in House of M. He's framed the Avengers for treason, and he has no problem using pieces of Terrigen to give his daughter Luna special abilities, even though he knows he shouldn't do that. Also, that whole thing with Layla Miller after House of M, where he saved her life just so he can be the one to take her out, believing that she was responsible for the House of M event. Yeah, it's safe to say he went from Avenger to villain. Like, those are just 3 out of many, many things. In West Coast Avengers 33, Magneto's bloodline got the best of him, and he got fellow Avengers captured by the communist gang. Fastest guy ever, but makes the most mistakes. I don't understand. Number 3, The Vision. Making his glorious debut in Avengers issue 57, The Vision is a synthezoid, and in the comics, he was created by Ultron using parts of the original Human Torch and the mind of Wonder Man. Just bam, smack together. He turned on his original creator, Phineas Horton, and he joined the Avengers. Nice. And then in the MCU, he's created as Ultron's new body, but with the addition of the Mind Stone and a little bit of Jarvis, we have an android Avenger. Also nice. But during the Secret Empire storyline, Vision was part of Hydra's Avengers when they were taking over the world, all from an AI virus. Gotta get that firewall installed, my friend. Arnim Zola was the one to blame for that. So who knows, maybe now with the White Vision being free in the MCU and pretty much reborn, his firewall probably isn't the best either. Also, it's confusing because it appears that Vision gets all of his memories back, but then he flies away and then he's not to be seen for the rest of the show. So clearly something's up here. I'm betting the MCU does him dirty. Maybe they reprogram him to make him evil or something. Or he might become Ultron. That was a big theory for WandaVision. We'll see. We'll see. Number 2, Captain America. There are a couple lines from Steve Rogers that fans will remember that took place in the MCU, like Avengers Assemble, that is America's ass, but the line Hail Hydra was followed by a roar of applause on opening night of Endgame. Why? Because not only does he use his post-Avengers knowledge to obtain the scepter, which in that of itself is already pretty sweet, but because the audience expects another cool elevator fight and Steve outsmarts us. But the line Hail Hydra comes right from the comics, and a bit of a darker scenario. The last words of Captain America Steve Rogers were that of Hail Hydra, and fans were not happy. This was huge news. People were pretty upset. Readers were sending in death threats. Like, could you imagine? The 2017 series Secret Empire concluded that bad Captain America was a double and that the good guy was locked in the cosmic cube. Okay, solid save, but those images of evil Steve will live in our heads rent-free, so thank you for that. And finally, number 1, Scarlet Witch. Of course, I'm saving her for last, of course. She's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did of course join the Avengers as well. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during the events of M-Day, she spoke those 3 words, no more mutants, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or wiped out. That large number being 986,618, only leaving a couple hundred left. That's crazy, that's like Thanos level destruction almost. And then in the MCU as well, we just watched Wanda become a villain over a 9-week period. She had a mental breakdown similar to M-Day, and she trapped Westview in her hex. Now, of course, she frees everybody and things look pretty back to normal, kind of, by the end of the show. But with that after credit scene of her studying the Darkhold and with the given knowledge that Wanda is in the next Doctor Strange movie, she's for sure going to become a villain. Even for a little bit, she'll be a villain, for sure. I can't wait to see what else she does. She looked like she was studying up pretty fast while she was sipping tea on her doorstep, so I don't know. Her mind's crazy. She can do anything she wants.
Number 10, Scarlet Witch. So many of us like to see the Scarlet Witch as this misunderstood magic user that is just looking for love. Well, she used to be one of the original members of the Brotherhood of Evil. She was teamed up with Magneto right from the start, and for years she thought her powers were only mutant powers. I mean, it made sense her brother Quicksilver was a mutant and the two of them were both working for Magneto. He was a mutant and everybody they were fighting was also a mutant. But after Scarlet Witch and her brother decided to part ways from the Brotherhood, they would decide that they needed to start using their powers for good and join the Avengers. It's wild how in comic books you can go from domestic terrorist to hero like that fast. It's incredible. But even after Scarlet Witch would decide to be a hero, it wouldn't be the last time she would do something to hinder nearly every hero in the world. And of course, I'm referring to the infamous M-Day would have Scarlet Witch use her powers to rewrite reality and see it to that the mutants are nearly extinct. This was partly caused by her relationship with Magneto, who's her dad, and a very not great dad, I can also say. And before we go to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video because it does go a long way for our channel. Helps us out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Now back to some Avengers who used to be villains. Number 9, Wonder Man. It's hard to know in the Marvel Universe when you're being tricked because everyone has got a plan up their sleeve, even the good guys. But if you're working with the tactical Baron von Zemo, then you better believe that he's doing something dirty behind the scenes. See, Wonder Man used to just be a regular working class man. Actually, his story is nearly identical to that of the Vulture in the MCU. He's a working man. Stark puts him out of the business and then he has to do whatever he can to try and make ends meet. So eventually he's given the option to use advanced tech to get back at the people who wronged him, and he loves the idea of that. I mean, I'm kind of on board with that too, let's do it. That opportunity would come back when Baron von Zemo would approach him with a proposition. He would give Wonder Man, who was then just Simon Williams, the power of ionic energy so he could have the power to crush Iron Man. But partway through, his anger faded and he decided that taking on Iron Man wasn't the answer after all. So the two of them turned on Baron von Zemo. But here's the catch. The Baron isn't going to get caught with his pants down. He had Poison Williams, who would soon die after. So his hero life was short-lived because once you die in comics, you are dead forever. Moment of silence. Only for a bit, because he came back later on. Yeah, he came back. He was brought from the dead and is now a registered member of the Avengers. So, welcome back. Number 8, The Winter Soldier. You should know the story of the Winter Soldier by now. If you have not seen that movie yet, please go check it out because it's arguably the best movie in the MCU. And the story of the Winter Soldier has more flip-flops than a beach in Florida. The Winter Soldier was formerly Bucky Barnes, the best friend and right-hand man of Captain America. A tragic accident would have him fall to his death, or so Steve Rogers thought. It turns out Hydra got a hold of him and used some experimental tech to not only give him one of the most badass robotic arms that I've ever seen, but they also brainwashed him to be a living weapon. They used his advanced war training and then embedded him with Hydra assassination techniques. He was then frozen over and over again, only to be thawed out when Hydra needed to send him out to kill somebody. But eventually he would cross paths with Steve Rogers and the old memories would come flooding back to him. He would fight back against his Hydra programming and turn to become a good guy, even if he had to fight Iron Man to do it. Number 7, Hawkeye. Man, to think that one of the main members of the MCU used to be a bad guy, I mean, like, it's not that hard to believe now, but when you see him break down in Avengers Endgame and start chasing down gangs in Tokyo, then it all starts to make sense how this guy can have a dark side. But the first couple of times that we see Hawkeye show up, he was working with Black Widow, someone who actually we'll be mentioning later on this list. She would get him to tag along on missions where the two of them had to take down the flying tin can man known as Iron Man. But there wasn't enough hate in Hawkeye's heart to keep him on the dark side, and he eventually swapped over to work with the heroes, and since then, he hasn't looked back. Number 6, Loki. Now, never an official member of the Avengers, I mean, he didn't stand with them when every hero in the MCU teamed up to storm Thanos' army and save the universe, but he did some of the most heroic acts that set everything up so the Avengers could save the day. He summoned Surtur so that he could take out Hela. He teamed up with Thor to save the people of Asgard, and he even threw his life on the line to try and kill Thanos. The guy's time as a hero is pretty short-lived, but he did come through when it counted, and I think the Avengers will look back at him as one of the most heroic members of them all. Just saying. Number 5, Red Hulk. I really love the Hulk's villains. I mean, you have the leader, which kind of represents the opposite of the Hulk, all brains with very little brawn. But then so many of his other villains are just like him, but slightly different, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Let's just get 2 cannonballs and fire them at each other and see what happens. Boom. The results are usually pretty explosive. Well, if you didn't know, Red Hulk is the general who always wanted the Hulk dead. Thaddeus Ross. I guess he went down the if you can't beat him, join him line, thinking that when it came to taking out the big green beast, he was actually able to keep his identity a secret, but once it was finally revealed who he was, it would be Captain America that would team up with him. With the two of them having a military background, it kind of made sense. It also made sense for the Red Hulk to become a hero. I mean, Thaddeus wasn't that far off in his quest to stop the Hulk, even though the big green beast is a force for good most of the time. He would be seen as a threat to everybody else around him. And Thaddeus seemed to have better control over his version of the Hulk than Bruce ever did. Number 4, Namor. It doesn't matter what comic book universe you're in, you gotta have a fish dude. That's just a staple of how everything works, that's it. And for the Marvel Universe, we of course have Namor. The Submariner, he was actually one of the original villains in Marvel. The dude's pretty old, with his first comic coming out in 1939. He's the ruler of Atlantis, and he didn't like the way things were handled on the surface, so he decided to duke it out with the people walking on land. Turns out that he wasn't a match for the people on the surface, so he decided to join them. He would eventually team up with the Avengers, but even though he was now fighting side by side with them, he's always had a superiority complex when it comes to dealing with surface-dwelling super people. And even though the Avengers saw him as an ally, when push came to shove, he would ditch them and team with the X-Men to try and take down the Avengers. He even flooded Wakanda, which seems like a bit of an overreaction. He's always had a sore spot when it comes to the Black Panther. I think maybe it's because he hates seeing a surface civilian as advanced as Atlanteans. Could be. Number 3, Vision. Even though the MCU will have you thinking that Vision was made by the Avengers to take out Ultron, it was really the other way around. Hank Pym's least favorite kid would make the android as a tool to take out the Avengers. I guess he didn't feel like getting his hands dirty that day. Okay. Well, he should have done a better job at programming the damn thing, because while fighting the Avengers, Vision decides to swap sides and teaming up with the good guys, which in the end seems to be the worst possible thing that could happen for Ultron. You build something to kill the Avengers, but then it turns on you, and then the Avengers are now stronger, but then all the secrets that this machine knows about you will be leaked to them. But now Vision has become one of the most famous members of the Avengers, with him and Wanda starring in the new WandaVision TV show on Disney+. And don't worry if you haven't gotten around to watching that yet. I'm not going to ruin anything for you, but you definitely should go and watch it right now. We're only 3 episodes in, so you got time to catch up before it ends. Plenty of time. Number 2, Black Widow. I mean, her name is Black Widow, so I mean, that's not usually how heroes are named unless they're an anti-hero, like the Punisher, you know? It should be no surprise that she's super sneaky, and she actually used to be one of Iron Man's greatest villains. The Black Widow started out as an agent sent over from Russia to bring down one of the founding members of the Avengers. It's kind of weird to think that in Marvel universes that would be developed down the line, she would be one of the founding members. It's awesome. But the villain was just so popular that nobody wanted to see her go. And after the Cold War ended, the story of a Russian agent that was sent over to dismantle a part of America that everybody loved just wasn't as compelling as it once was. And number 1, Doctor Doom. Now I know this is only for a limited time, but it's still so wild that it deserves a spot on this list, a very high spot on this list. We're talking about the same Doctor Doom that once was ruling Battleworld, the same Doctor Doom that stole Odin's powers, the same guy. He's one of the biggest, baddest villains that gives Thanos a run for his money with the amount of schemes that he's pulled. Well, there was a time when Victor Von Doom suffered a pretty serious blow to the head, an injury that would take out most people, but we're not talking about most people, are we? Valeria came through to fix up Doom's brain, and not long after that, he was working with the good guys. Right around this time, Tony was in a deep coma, so someone needs to step in the role of Iron Man. And who better than Doctor Doom himself? Having Doom become Iron Man for that brief moment was one of the coolest moments ever, hands down.